Deltora Shadowlands, The Cavern of the Fear. Chapter 9, Grains of Truth. Doom drew back from the table. So, the Shadow Lord played the same trick on Pyra as he did on Deltora. He divided the people, made the land's protection useless, then invaded. The Pyrans allowed him to do it, Leaf muttered, rubbing his hand over his eyes, as we in Deltora did in our turn. He used their anger, their stubbornness, their ambition, their weakness. Your Majesty, a white figure was hobbling slowly towards them from the back of the library. Joseph. Forgive me, Your Majesty, the old man mumbled as he drew closer, but I forgot. Leaf scrambled to his feet and held out his hand. Forgive me, Joseph, he said. You were trying to tell me of the Pyran pipe, and I would not listen. Joseph's face lit up with an eager smile as he took the offered hand. You have read the tale, then? He whispered. You believe it contains a grain of truth? At Leaf's nod, he hurried on. I am sure that each of the Pyran tribes would have treasured its own part of the pipe and kept it safe. So, if the Pyrans still exist, the 3 parts of the Pyran pipe exist also. I am as sure of it as you are, said Leaf, and I know the pipe can help us, for I have heard its voice. Joseph stared at him, awestruck. You must understand, Your Majesty, he ventured at last, that the enemy has the Shadowlands too firmly in his grasp now for even the Pyran pipe to drive him out of it. All the pipe could do, I believe, is weaken him. I understand, Leaf said firmly. Do not fear, Joseph. All we hope for is time. Time to get our prisoners out. But first we must find the Pyran Islands. Yes, Joseph cried. That is what I had forgotten to tell you. Swiftly, he seized Volume 5 of the Annals and expertly riffled through the back pages. In a very short time he had found what he was seeking, a series of maps. He pointed to a small sketch above another, much larger map of the Western Sea. There is no signature, but I strongly suspect that this sketch was made by Doran, our greatest explorer, Joseph said. He certainly drew the larger map below. I recognize his hand. Thank you, Joseph. Leaf's heart was too full to say more. This map was so simple as to be almost useless, but to him it proved one thing at least. The Pyran Islands were not just a legend, they existed, and that meant they could be found. Joseph beamed. It is my pleasure to be of service, he said. He bowed, turned, and tottered back to his room. Leaf reached for the paper and pencil. I will trace this map, he said. Perhaps we can find others with which to compare it. He looked down at the sheaf of paper in front of him. Now that it was in better light, he could see that the top page bore indented marks caused by Jasmine writing heavily on a sheet of paper above it. He rubbed the side of the pencil tip lightly over the white surface. As he had hoped, the grooves in its surface began to show as white lines. O.M. Hills Valley, Dragon Under. Old red rainbow, green, black. What does this mean, I wonder, he murmured. You can ask Jasmine, said Doom, barely glancing at the page. I'm going to wake her, and Rodda too, if they are to accompany me on this voyage. Leaf looked up quickly. Accompany us, you mean, he said. I'm going with you. Do you really think the Pyrans will give up their greatest treasure to anyone other than the King of Deltora? Doom frowned. You are right, he said at last. The king must be the one to ask the favor. But you must agree to this, Leaf. Jasmine, Rodda, and I will be the ones to take the risks, if risks there be. Leaf nodded reluctantly. Doom lightly touched his shoulder and left him. Alone, Leaf stared again at Jasmine's strange words. They made him uneasy. O.M. Hills must mean the dangerous Osmine Hills to the north of Del, but what the rest of it meant he could not imagine. Ranesh had said that Jasmine was reading Volume 1 of the Annals, the very book open before him right now. Leaf began turning pages, finding more tenor birdsong tales, the tale of the 3 knights, the 7 goblins, the dragon's egg. Then he found something else. Caught between 2 pages was a small black feather. Cree! Leaf imagined the great black bird sitting on the book as Jasmine read. He imagined Cree fluttering back as Jasmine closed the book hurriedly on Joseph's approach, and a feather falling, to be trapped between the pages. He read the story on the open double page with a growing sense of dread. The girl with the golden hair. Once there was a maiden called Elise, whose only beauty was her long golden hair which shone like the sun. Though her eyes were small, her nose very long, and her ears big as bats' wings, her golden tresses were so beautiful that she had many admirers. She encouraged all except one, a youth called Rosnan, who was as plain as she. One day Alice was combing her hair to the delight of all who watched her, when a great golden dragon swooped from the sky and carried her off. All her handsome admirers wept and gave her up for lost, but Rosnan took his sword and followed the dragon to its cave in a valley of the Osmine hills. Seeing him, the dragon snarled and breathed fire, but Rosnan stood firm. "Free Alice, great dragon," he cried. "Take me instead." The dragon laughed, a truly terrible sound that made even the vine weaver birds in the tree above fall silent. "You will not do," it said. "Have you golden hair to line my nest? I do not think so." With that, it flicked its tail and sent Rosnan sprawling, the sword falling useless to the ground. "Run, Alice!" shouted Rosnan as he prepared for death. "Save yourself!" But Alice picked up the fallen sword and with a single sweep cut off her hair. "Take it," she cried to the dragon, holding out the golden silk, so long and thick that it filled her arms. "But let him live." The dragon turned away from Rosnan, and its eyes shone with pleasure as it took the hair. "Thank you," it said. "I will." Then Alice saw herself in the mirror of the dragon's eyes, and was so horrified at her ugliness that she screamed and ran. She ran deep into the dragon's cave and down, down under the earth, into the caverns where the goblins dwell. Calling after her, Rosnan followed, but Alice did not stop, for gold light gleamed in the cavern walls, tormenting her and reminding her of what she had lost. They fled, Alice in front, Rosnan behind, through the sunless world below the world, where the seas of forgetfulness crawl. They fled so far they forgot why they were fleeing, but they went without harm, for they were so ugly that the goblins mistook them for a pair of their own. The gleaming gold changed to red that glowed like the setting sun. Then came glimmering rainbows and the green of the forest after rain, and still the chase went on. But when the color faded to the grey of dusk, and the darkness of deepest night was ahead, Alice feared to go further and stopped. Then Rosnan caught up with her and took her in his arms, saying that to him she was the most beautiful girl in the world, which was nothing but the truth, for he loved her with all his heart. And Alice looked at him and saw a soul that was honest, brave, and true, and her heart melted within her. The goblins saw their love and wondered at its power. A few travelled to the world above, seeking the same happiness for themselves, though never finding it. But the lovers were never seen under the sun again, and only the birds know that deep in the world below the world they lived happily ever after. Lee sat for a moment, deep in thought. Then he heard a sound from the door. Doom and Rodda were striding towards him, grim-faced. He knew what they had come to tell him before they spoke. "Jasmine has gone, hasn't she?" he asked dully. They looked surprised, but did not ask how he knew. "Her bed has not been slept in," Rodda rubbed his forehead angrily. "She slipped away yesterday, no doubt, while I was asleep. I should have expected this. By now she will be in the forests, and alone." Leaf shook his head. "Not alone," he replied. If I am right, Glock is with her, and they have not gone to the forests, but to the Osmine hills. I'm sure that Jasmine thinks she has found a secret way to the Shadowlands, underground.